It's totally an honor to speak at such a fantastic conference. So thanks to everybody who put this on, and thanks for all of you for showing up here. I appreciate it. I have fun with this stuff. And it makes me happy that people actually want to know about it. Okay, so on to let's just dive into this. Ike context, who am I? I've used Jails extensively for web application servers, software development purposes. The methodology I'm presenting here is attempting to be very stock, okay? Stock BSD, stock old school Unix, stock long-lasting. So I'm not trying to present any like, oh, I've got some like super cool Ike way of doing things. It's like, no, I like doing things like they did it like 20 years ago. Because those things I think will still be the way we do things 20 years from now. I'm not a jail author. I'm not involved with committing to FreeBSD in any formal manner whatsoever. But yeah, I watch a lot of it, and I'm around a lot of it, so if you have questions about that kind of stuff, I can point you in the right directions. I just use the hell out of these things and have for a very long time and enjoy them. Let me see, warranty or announcement. I'll be out at the party later or somewhere. I'll be around. And if you want to ask questions, I'm trying to stick to classic process and ideas, as I already said that. And if that's not good enough, there's too many people at conferences. Well, there's this thing I started that's kind of stillborn called Jailing.net. It was announced at BSD Can in Ottawa a year and a half ago. It got a lot of interest right off the bat. Tons of people signed up and just plugged in this little web portal app, and everybody started signing up. Nobody did anything with it for a year. I uploaded some lecture slides and some things from there, but nothing went anywhere. So I've shut it down. The domain's about to die. I'm about to let go of it. If anybody has any really good ideas about what to do here, talk to me. Keep that in mind while we're talking. Okay, so now an exercise. This is just some kind of something to wrap our heads around the way I'm thinking about going at jails and what we're doing. Has anybody ever seen Charles and Ray Eames' film, Powers of 10? Okay. Cool film. It's about a guy who's sleeping in a park in Chicago. And they zoom in and out from this, from the cosmos, way out, way further than these stills show, and then zoom in at these intervals of powers of 10 into the guy sleeping right in the middle, and into his hand, and into the cells, and into the molecules, and it's just a real mind trip. A lot of fun. And when you get into the scale of things, you notice patterns start emerging at various scales. And this is kind of subjective and just kind of fun, but roll with me here. Patterns start emerging, and things become real similar at certain scales and certain levels, and perhaps that means you could apply similar ideas to how we interact with these things at these particular levels or scales. Today I'm presenting, this is the Ike universe, all right? So, out there we've got our, global communication satellites and our network. There's a map of the Opti project, from the Opti project, and we scale in. We're going to my home, East Coast power grid. We come into New York City, we scale past a nice bug meeting, we scale into it. Hey, there's a data center, we're in the bowels of it, there's a less bug meeting in the basement, and now we're in the data center, and everybody in the room, does everybody know what a data center looks like in this room? Is everybody involved with this stuff? Yeah, I'm just going to kick him out. So we get into what happens inside the cabinet. We got a bunch of servers, and that's a picture of me sleeping last year at Shmoocon. So this is still about a guy sleeping. And we got a server. We all know what goes into computers, and we know what's in the server and in the computers. And the network, and then we get to our ports on the outside, what's listening in the outside world, and then we get to what I'm here talking about, which is BSD Unix. And then we get to our services on the inside of that BSD Unix and what they're doing. And behind that, we got the little Apache Feather and SSH. The Apache's handing this off to other things behind that, some Python or PHP or Java or, God knows what applications running behind all of this stuff. And then the little thing down in the corner at BSD conferences, they always laugh when I say it runs in NetBSD, but this isn't a... And all of that complexity just to pull up a bloody web page. All right? It's a lot of complexity, a lot of stuff going on. People have formalized other versions of mapping out the complexity of what goes into that one web page, but I really like my version. And, so when we look at hardware, you can kind of see here, we all know about how hardware changes. Everybody in this room has been around long enough to know things are getting small. The little thing next to the matchsticks, those are embedded web servers. And the one next to it with the quarter at least has an Ethernet NIC, so it's a little more comfortable. Things are getting smaller, faster, cheaper all the time in this, at all these different levels and layers. But we're here to talk about the Unix layer down at the bottom there. So let me enlarge this. This is my drawing of Unix for this presentation. And this is really a kind of a userland sketch, a way to try and visualize the way things are organized around the kernel in the center, and you scale out around the edges, and you start jumping into familiar looking things, bin, sbin. Does everybody kind of get the gist of this diagram? Does everybody kind of just see a nod? Yeah, people nodding, thank you. So, here's your user space of a Unix operating system. Our world is complex. Thanks, Dan Gear, for opening that up yesterday. Fun. Unix is complex, and there's similarities, I think. Let's look at this real quick. This is Mandelbrot fractal, so there's probably a bunch of math heads in the room who are way more adept than I. But this is fun and pretty trippy. So everybody just step back, trip out, watch the fractal, and you see all the patterns emerge. People have been around this stuff. We all get it. There's patterns at various levels of scale that you can find. And we pop out, and there we go, Julia set Mandelbrot fractal. These similarities at various layers of scale, I think, are important and can be applied in fun ways. Like, what happens if we get into messing around with virtual Unixes and screwing around with scale here? What happens when we put a Unix inside a Unix, inside a Unix, inside a Unix? So here we are going into, looks just like the other Unix. Now, except it's backwards, so he just told me. With that, these kinds of ideas in terms of virtualizing systems are really, really old. I just want to bring that up real quick. So when you go back to Unix, this is the original Unix time-sharing paper put out by Dennis Ritchie and Ken Thompson. And the entire intent originally of Unix was to make a really good time-sharing OS. And there's a movie about that. I'll show it to people later if they want it. You get the idea. So what real-world context warrant virtualization of the entire operating system? Well, we have all the things we know about and that we're here at the conference for. External security threats, you have development messes. But what's really important with jailing, and what it was really designed for, is this term you see in the man page over and over and over, mutually untrusted users. Now here's a bunch of capture the flag guys at DEF CON rocking it, and that's what you usually think of when you think of mutually untrusted users on the same Unix machine. Like, what are they all doing? Well, in other contexts, mutually untrusted users are way more, your average people. And why are these people mutually untrusted users? Well, that guy in the end is not to be trusted in the woman with the pink jacket in her kitchen, period. It's just not. He doesn't get to touch things. And conversely, she's not trusted with his motorcycle. All right? Yet all these people with diverse needs, interests, and ways of living are all waiting on this common infrastructure in the picture, some kind of subway or train. But then you do also have mutually untrusted users, and this is Shmoocon last year. And you have all kinds of other examples. I hosted their website for a while. These women sucked. Then you have people who do stupid things. All right. Note this guy's on the ladder, in the metal ladder in the pool, barefoot with a drill. Right? People do dumb shit. You have people who are just a mess. They're all over the place. And you have programs. Programs are users too. Programs can often not be trusted. Then you have, cultural clashes, ideological cultural clashes. Like in India, rats are treated like we treat cats. So there's people who run things, and want to run programs and CGIs and all kinds of things that you would never want to touch in the world, but they do it and they love it, and that's how they roll. And then you have professionals, professional sysadmins who have the most frequent and sometimes the most gruesome accidents, right? Muscle memory totally kills. And so when everybody's using common infrastructure and you're all on the same server, it can totally botch up the works for everyone, right? All kinds of problems just can make a total mess. We're here at this conference. We're here at a security conference. We're all talking about security and all these things, and we all know a lot about securing boxes in this room, and we all have a lot of fun with that. But we all know what the answer is to all of these problems, right? Damn it. We want harmony. Okay, once upon a time, Unix was fun. Once upon a time, computing was fun. And working on a server that feels like that is not fun. It takes exorbitantly long amount of time to do all kinds of simple crap, go through all kinds of policies, go through all kind of, oh, we can't do that because that's bad policy, that's this or that. This is why jailing in virtual machines is a really cool, fun idea. One other little moment about why virtualization is a cool idea. You have a lot of old junk doing things at home or at work, wherever. Rack full of stuff, 3 web servers, a local use DNS cache, file server for 2 people, and 2 dev servers. And look at all those big ass, those are all 1 gigabyte SCSI drives. That thing's sucking a lot of power, and it's really old and wonky. All of that could be replaced by one little high-density 1U box and run a bunch of virtual machines. So you still got you got 3 web servers, you got your 1 local use DNS cache, and heck, you want to make it redundant? Buy 2 of them. Great. So all of that with jail. All right. Okay. So what is jail? Jail is a user space utility. It's just like ifconfig or any other user space utility on your BSD Unix system. Jail produces a virtual system image. It is process tree based. Two, it's the actual system call that imprisons the process. It calls chroot and attaches it to an IP, and it is very few lines of code. There's been people from other camps of machine virtualization that do really interesting things who've looked at me right in the face and said, jail's stupid. It's just chroot glued to an IP interface. It's just chroot on crack. That's stupid. I look at them and go, yeah, and it's really cool. It's simple. That's all it is. That's all jail is. So yeah, this whole lecture and all your time is being spent over like maybe, at this point, 40 lines of code somewhere in the system. Various places, actually. What a jail is not, it's not a classical machine emulator. All right, it's not chroot, which is commonly misused in other Unix cultures. OpenBSD. Please, OpenBSD people, when you're using chroot, please, 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 it poisons all the search engine pots when everybody calls everything jailing and uses it as a verb when you're using chroot. They're very different things. I think I almost convinced Henning Brouwer that that was acceptable, but then he threw a drink at me. Anyways, some uses for jail. Let's see, is this thing? Some uses for jail. When an entire OS is needed for a small service, some services and applications and things that you're building and doing are often becoming way more demanding. And you want an entire OS, but you don't want to mess up all this other stuff you're doing with the system, and you don't want to introduce vulnerabilities into a system. So you want to securely separate untrusted users and processes. They're great for learning and development. You can just make jails and get rid of them. move them around. Great for hardware resource sharing if you don't have much, you don't have many servers. And how much are your CPU times desirable? How much, really? A lot. And there's really insane high availability possibilities at very low cost. So you can keep really, really robust, redundant systems up for, without having massive budgets. Poor uses for jail. Yeah, if you're a kernel hacker, you don't like jails because you don't get a kernel. Yeah. So that's a big difference between the jailing and other virtual machine environments. Other virtual machine environments, VMware, Xen, all these things, they actually provide an abstracted hardware in software. Jail doesn't do any of that. And there's great reason why. There's limited network interface access. All right, you get your one IP. I'll talk about that in just a bit more detail later. Limited device driver access. And there's times not to use jail when chroot will do the job just fine, like bind, the chroot options for running bind in a server. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. No real advantage here. Some applications require particular low-level system calls, notably Postgres. If there's any Postgres people in the room, please talk to me after the lecture, please. I really, really don't. I'm trying not to be a whiner, but the System 5 IPC calls are terrible. Yeah, so Postgres doesn't run securely in jails. It's one of the few noted applications that has serious problems when being jailed. Anyways, I'll quit ranting. How to jail? Well, the instructions are really the man pages. I mean, that's the definitive answer for all of this. That's going to be your best resource for everything having to do with jailing. It's concise, it's clear, it's short, and it's all worthwhile. But there's only a couple steps. You build the BSD userland from source. You create an IP alias on your machine using your standard ifconfig to, assign the IP address to an interface. And you run a jail call with the IP and this jailed userland and jail boots, sort of. It picks up at RC. It does not go through, of course, all of your bootloaders and all that kind of stuff. So, a practical comparison in the pictures would be that, instead of being hardware, you just got a path on your host to an actual directory, somewhere where you're going to jail. With that, also, traditionally, it's kind of tradition that you just link, for your kernel, you just link to dev null. You don't really have to do that. It's tradition. Mostly because during the 4.x era jails, nobody kind of knew what a system would feel like if you totally removed it, if there was no thing called kernel. But nothing happened. Everything's pretty tight and isolated in any BSD Unix. With that stated, okay, so does anybody have any questions at this point, real quick, on what I've covered? Because I'm just going to go further and keep slamming into this stuff. Can I take a quick poll also just to see, how many people in here have run jails? Okay, fistful of people. How many people work with BSD Unix? A lot of people in the room. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're just going to dive into some demos. And I have some movies here for the demos because typing on screen is real time is awful. Yeah, complete. Then I wouldn't have a lecture. Yeah. So here's a 5.3 system. All of this stuff is identical for FreeBSD 6, and 6 in my mind, and for everything having to do with jailing, 6 is like 5 stable. It's great. So we got this system. Okay, pre-flight. This is going to be really simple. We're going to get source to build with. CVS up is a great way to do it. Make somewhere for the jails to live, partitions, dismounts, whatever. Make somewhere for jail-related start and management scripts to live. Starting jails from RC can be really disastrous in many contexts. Quick note on that. RC, a bunch of people have emailed me. in recent months going, hey, I've been using all this jail stuff, I'm starting all these jails, I've got like 30 jailed machines running on this piece of hardware, and I'm starting them all from the RC mechanism that's there in FreeBSD. That was a hack. I don't know. I'm not a committer, but I would lobby to get that stuff yanked, because there have been so many problems when you're starting up all of these virtual machines just as your machine is booting. What happens when you have a really bizarre problem with one of these jails booting? You can hang your machine for a long time before you figure it out, and in order to really resolve the problem, you have to keep rebooting the host server. My objectives are to keep the host server online and sacred at all times, and restart the jails as necessary. So starting from RC is, in my mind, a really bad idea, especially because then you're also doing something at system boot with ostensibly untrusted things that could be starting in the jails themselves that you've given to mutually untrusted users. So you don't know what the hell is going to happen. That's my comment there. So if anybody wants to talk about details some other time. I'm sorry? The question is, how would you manage that if you have a remote server? If you have a remote unmanaged server, how would you start the jails? Well, let me see. Ostensibly, at boot time, I do it by hand. I treat jails as though they are hardware machines. So that's my answer right there. To my knowledge, I haven't heard anybody, including PHK, argue with me about that one. No. Yeah. Yeah. Funny. Question. Quick question.
Well, yeah, but this is the whole discussion we had at Ike-Jail on all this. And the stupid thing is using RC systems. The smart thing is to actually put a script that you run manually in the parent directory to the jail itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah, I'll get to that. Okay, so again, the man page is the definitive resource for jails, right? And there's a little section we're going to start with in here. Down, not very far, bang, this is how we build our jail source code, right? It's just like compiling the source for your operating system, except you're not building your kernel, and you're putting the actual source code in some other directory. It's really that simple. So can everybody read all of that? That here's the jail, and you make a directory, you make world, ... Okay, so let's do it, So if we're going to build this from source, can everybody read this okay? No, not in the back. Okay, so I'll try and be verbal. Let me see, I can't read it real well because it's shrunk here either. So we're making a directory, user local jails. We're making directory user local jails bin. Why am I making bin? I'm making bin because that's where I'm going to put my start scripts to answer that question. Make a directory user local jails. Chickadee, that's what we're going to call the jail today. And I'm going to give it this underscore name, which is an old 4.x convention, which I won't even explain today because there's no reason to. It was convention to put the IP address in the directory name so that you keep certain track of things. Now we're going to assign a variable. We're using bash, so we can assign this variable of d equals our path to our jail. We're going to change directory into user source, and we're going to make that. Oh, we already made the directory, so we don't need to do it. It's like talking to yourself in the mirror when you type like this and record it. It's like, hey. So like, here we go, make world. Cool. So do we want to all sit here and watch this make world for the next 40 minutes? No. We'll move on. So basically what we've done is we took and we made this directory, right? And are starting to build the source for FreeBSD in that directory. Common question, why isn't there an automated build system for this stage? Why all that verbose? Why all these verbose instructions? Well, when you start doing it, you realize that a lot of these things are based on personal preference. Like, hey, what if you don't have your source code and here's your source? What if you don't want to put your let me see. What if you don't want to link a kernel? What if there's a lot of various options here? What if you're going to throw flags at Mount DevFS? So these are all things that are kind of up to your own discretion to change. Yeah, Shmoocon.
Yeah, Shmoocon.
I got a Shmoocon. Fuck.
I have a problem with that because we have standards like user local under FreeBSD. Why not have a standard for jails? Why not have a standard?
Well, here's the deal. Why not user jails? And I'm gonna hold on to that ball. Maybe I'll throw it back. Yeah, there are standards, but you get into situations where contextually you may have a system where, hey, what if you're putting all of your jails on a separate hard partition to deal with resource-based attacks? What if you're a symlink? Sure. What? Symlink. Okay, my answer to you then with a Shmoocon back is right. Okay. Let me see. Let me see. So you want to take care with the build procedure. It's better to automate things later once you have all the basics set up and in your particular environment. You can see how this can apply to a lot of big network environments where you need to start customizing things. And even one more answer for this gentleman who's being very cool and doesn't really deserve to get beat up. But hey, you know, when you're applying this stuff at large-scale environments, there becomes a point where your large-scale environment starts having requirements that make certain standards look kind of ridiculous and stupid. So when you get into any large-scale, like I'd been part of a large-scale jail-based web hosting company. Well, our needs and the way that we built the actual company grew very differently at certain moments, and we had to respond to certain other challenges from money and other, from a business perspective, from a tech perspective, from a security perspective, from a clients changing their minds perspective, that really kind of shot an idea like putting things in a common standardized place in the foot. So that's yet another reason. When you start doing anything at scale, you find that some things break apart at moments, like standards. We're done. Hey, so we're gonna make distribution and slap all of our source into its destination directory. And we're gonna jump in. We mounted DevFS. Are we about to? Am I gonna hit return? Is it frozen? Did somebody root my box while I'm speaking? So we're gonna make distribution. I think it stops there. So let's look at what we did. We made this directory, which is in, path to jail directory. We populated it full of userland compiled stuff, and that's as far as we've gotten. So now we're gonna mount our devices. Now we're gonna mount the devices. Mount DevFS. Now, a cool thing about that's the difference between. Well, let's mount DevFS and look at this. There's a cool difference between jailing in 4.x jailing and jailing in 5 and 6, and that is that in 4.x devices were built. You had to make them. In FreeBSD 5 and 6, devices are mounted, and you can just throw flags with a whole cool macro set language added to say what you're going to show and hide when you mount your devices. With that stated, if you got a big jailing machine, you don't want all of your jailed users to see everything, so read the man page for Mount DevFS and go crazy. It's really, really feature-packed, really cool. So, we had our stuff compiled and built, and now we've mounted our devices, and we tossed a null kernel into the root for tradition's sake at this point. On the master system, here's some important stuff to think about and to put in. Send mail enable none. Well, these are some common things where you don't want applications on your host system to be something that's easily exploitable, because going to take down your system. You want to really, really go crazy end to end, like I couldn't even talk about it today, locking down your host system. It's a sacred thing. And you want to make sure that any daemon that's listening on any network interface, it can bind to the host system's IP address. If you don't, you're going to get some weird stuff where suddenly an app is listening on IP alias interfaces, and you can confuse yourself and make trouble. So this is a pretty easy little list right here of things to do. It's in the man page again. It's all pretty sane and self-explanatory. Let me see. On the master system here, we also are, making sure to configure, in this case, SSH as an example. Listen only to a host system's IP address. Important, because you don't want SSH to be we don't want packets to get confused as to whose SSH it's talking to. We're talking to. Let me see. We're going to configure the system. What do we do with this one? Okay, so we're from the man page. We're calling the jail call, but we're not quite done. We're just configuring the jail. So we've got a ch-rooted shell at this point, nothing more than that. We're touching etcfs tab just to get rid of warnings during startup and loud syscontrol barking. We're throwing in network interfaces as nothing as well to shut syscontrol, syslog. To shut up syslog. These are basically just some things that the system is going to be looking for and be like, hey, I don't know if I have, do I have an IP address? Do I have a network interface? I don't get it. Just shut it up. And now you can see, yeah, we're using sysinstall here to set our root passwords on this server, to add user accounts, to do all of the stuff, set your time zone, to do all of the basic stuff that you would do on any server. You can use syscontrol, you can use all the utilities involved with doing all of these things. You can do whatever you want to make all this stuff. So we all get this, configuring and installing. Okay, so now we've done this. We've got built our source, we mounted our devices, and now we've added a number of things. We've added our user accounts and modified some of the configuration settings. That's about it so far. So we're almost there, and then the basic part of this is over, and we jump into some more fun conversation. And at that point, I want to open it up to more just shouting out questions. So right now we're using ifconfig to give an alias, to toss the system an alias of the IP address we want to give it, which is right here. And from here, we're going to mount the procfs, our process file system, and our jail tree. Directory tree. And we're really almost there. So now we've got our network interface assigned to the machine. We've got basically everything that a real, honest to goodness BSD Unix system has. And so now I go into running the start scripts. Here's an example start script in the slide, and it's pretty simple. It's just you can issue that ifconfig command as many times as you want, over and over and over and over again, and just keep the IP address there. Mounting your procfs devfs. Well, there's a lot of actually arguable ways to skin this cat, but those things you want to kind of watch out for, because if you're writing scripts to automate all this in your system, you can get stacks of devfs and your devices and procfs kind of mounting and then mounting again and mounting again. It's just a little annoyance. Never seen it cause any serious problems. Cough, cough. An orgy of repeated mountings. Yes, indeed. And real quick, that's a great thing to look for in people's jailed systems, if you can figure out what you can do with an orgy of repeated mountings. This is common. This is really a common little thing running in jails. So with that, then you just start the jail. You run the jail call from userland, the userland jail call, and give it the directory path, a host name. We're calling it Chickadee at this point, and that can be a fully qualified domain name if you wish. And you give it the IP, and you just execute RC and start your system. So let's just do it. We're just going to call the jail call and not use the start script here. Just do the whole thing all the way out. VNSH, etc, RC. Here we go. So we're going to start it. Do it. Slide. Do it. There we go. Hey, and we're locked up for just a second so we can give ourselves our keys. Just like starting up a real system for the very first time. And if anybody's writing this down right now, I'll give you this host system and you can see what you can do. Bang, okay, so that's it. It's over. Your jail has started, and now we can SSH into this jail. Yep. Oh boy. Oh yeah, that happens. So we're SSHing into the jail. Why do we want to SSH into the jail? Why don't we just want to like do stuff from the host system? Well, there's really good reasons for that from a security perspective, because if you're running a process that is bound to the host system and you're doing things inside of the jail, wouldn't that be a process that has now bridged the jail to the host system and breached the CH root that we've worked so hard to put into place here? So you really want to treat your jails, again, like real servers, real systems. And here we are. We're logged in. Bang. And we've got the whole system running. And do we have another different start? Okay, so JLS is a utility that lets you list jails, and they get a jail ID, which you can use with kill-all and a -J to kill all the processes in a jail. That's how you stop it. Running shutdown or reboot or anything from inside of the jail isn't going to do anything. Now, if you're doing this for, say, a web hosting company or some system that you really want to look like a real system, and you provide somebody a mechanism to restart their jail from inside of their jail, that again, doesn't that do something that affects the host system? This is the kind of thinking you got to be thinking. This is the kind of way you got to be thinking if you're going to build secure jailed systems. Is to really set them free. Really, really, really be hands off from the host system. Okay, and we're on mounting our file systems. Let me see, what's this video? We're just going to move on because we all get it. We're all in there. Now, there's all these fun opportunities to get out. And at this point, I'm just going to open up that anybody can start shouting out questions, and we'll try to deal with them in a reasonable way. A practical comparison here is these things are damn near identical in the way you deal with them and treat them. Best practices, the SSH thing I have covered. And also just so you can see on the right is like a kind of a crude version of a process tree, so you can just really, trying to really hammer in that all your processes are within the jailed process tree and completely isolated from other processes. You always can see straight file system userland from a master jail. Now, this is a really dangerous thing. If you're on your host system and you start traipsing around in the file system of a jailed system, you can find a lot of really annoying mistakes and problems very quickly. You can create big messes for yourself. For example, stupid common one, muscle memory. Who in the room knows what /home is on a FreeBSD system? What actually is that thing? Oh, what? Say that again. Oh, it's environment. No, it's a symlink to user local, or excuse me, user home. because /home is is very ancient. So with that stated, if you traipse into your jail's source tree and you traipse into your jail path to jail directory /home, it's a symlink to user home, which if you're doing this from the host system is going to take you to user home on your host system, right? You can make all kinds of trauma for yourself this way, in all kinds of really wild, unexpected ways. So keep everything clean, and when you're working in a jail, be in a jail, big time. It's important. Design your jailing system carefully and be creative. Look, that's a Hans note about doing things with read-only mounts. Well, there's been all these cool things that have been thrown at me that you can do with jails in all these contexts, which I'll mention now so that they can swim through your heads as we continue. For instance, a bunch of people don't want to have copies of the ports collection in every single jail. So, hey, you could use geom to do some kind of virtual disk mount. There's a couple things like nullfs and devfs, which are in terrible shape in FreeBSD land and aren't recommended under really any circumstances to be used by the authors even at this point, sadly. But that's because everybody's moved on to this thing called geom, which is kind of like Apple's I/O kit, if anybody's been around all that stuff. And it's a cool way to deal with disks, and there's all these great utilities for doing neat things with disks. So, if you wanted to, you could take a file back disk with your ports and just mount it repeatedly in all of your jail's userland tree. There's all kinds of fun tricks like that. There's also things, somebody I know runs a bunch of jails on Socris boxes, if anybody's familiar with those, little embedded computers, size of a mouse pad. Not real punchy little machines. Compiling source is a joke. He mounts the file system using NFS on faster boxes that work done on these little Socris boxes running the jails. Because jail code's really lightweight. What's available to the jail in proc? Dang good question. Everything, unless you throw flags at jail. And when I say everything, I'm sorry. Everything that's happening inside of a jail. All right, so in the process file system inside of a jail, you're not going to see processes on the host system or in neighboring jails. Now, I believe somebody said this to me, and I haven't had time to test it or screw around with it. I believe there's flags you can throw from the host system to actually allow certain kind of godlike access to proc file system. Somebody test it, try it. There's a million things to test and do here. So, because again, jailing uses all these really wild new special tools, like, you want to get comfy with tar, you want to get comfy with your IP interfaces, you want to get comfy with, ancient tools. Let me see. Great utilities. In 4.x jailing, there was some stuff written by Polish developer Pavel, whose last name I can never pronounce. JPS, JKill, and JTOP, which are jail equivalents of their, real world equivalents. There are all these Perl utilities that are, really, really handy and actually kind of important, I feel, in your host system in the 4.x era. But they were a little wonky, like they wouldn't print out to standard out real nicely, and they weren't really usable if you're going to automate things. And so when you hit 5.x, it's all built into the system. So PS and Kill have flags that you can throw them to do things specifically with jails. Plus, in 5.x, you have JLS to list your jails. JAttach. Now, JAttach is a little bit of something that you want to use caution. And if you're trying to exploit something from a jail, you want to actually, that's where to go. JAttach can take a process from the host system and attach it securely to a jailed process or a process within the jail. Well, this, of course, has security implications. So read the source, see what, do something. There are many syscontrol features for jailing, which I'll cover in just a little bit, which are really cool, help you lock things down. You want to design your jailing system carefully, be creative, blah, blah, blah. Notes about, nullfs, devfs, stay away from them. Or if you're competent and you're interested, does anybody want a puppy? those are some good projects that need a home. They need some love. Use the highest secure practices on your master jailing server, period. Okay. Common weak points. Let me see. Lost jail? Well, everything that you do with jails throws back its host name in the system, JLS, anything. If a jailed user who is root in their jail changes their host name, they can be pretty bloody hard to track down, especially in a system running a lot of jails, a lot of processes. It's not a fun situation. So you can lock it down. Yes, that is tweakable. We'll jump to that in just a second. But that's also a good, that's also quite exploitable. Default in FreeBSD at this point, and it always has been through the 5 series, is that locking down host names per jail or from the host system is off. Side note. Resource attacks. Let me see. Your disk's filling up. This is really common, real-world, boring crap. Log files and other fun growing. Well, quotas are a little bit messy. Disk slices are great. Disk images are really great. I'll get to that in a minute, too. Fork bombs and memory hogs. One big, important problem in jailing and any machine virtualization, and it's been a problem that's existed for 20 years. People have been trying to solve this in realistic ways, and if anybody has any great research they're working on in this direction, come talk to me, please. But this is a huge problem in computing, actually, all over the place. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. You can use secure levels and logging conf to deal with this, and I'll explain that. So process controls and really dealing with choking down your processes. Those are also weak points. A lot of jails are set up with, and the administrators really don't have any common tools to deal with nicing big batches of processes without going to some considerable typing expense. So you really want to sit down for your environment and take a look at what you would want to do to actually start nicing processes in jails if things start getting out of control. Yeah, question? No. Well, yeah. Yes and no. It'd be nice if you could. That would be a great utility to work on. It would be great if you could throw a J flag at actually nice and start jailing. Just nice your whole jail process tree. That requires just some work to be done to nice on FreeBSD. But you can do this at the moment with some scripts that you get all of the processes on a running jail by throwing the J flag at PS, getting all your processes and nicing those. So based on your setup, however you've set things up, or just how comfy you are just throwing flags and running the show that way, you can do that. Does that answer your question okay? All right. And then direct driver access. Well, you want to throw flags to to DevFS and ProcFS if you want to lock down things that you don't want users to see, like all of the other slices on your machine that have jails on them, all of the other file systems mounted in jails, that kind of stuff. Lock those things down. Common weak point. Well, are any of these? Oh, here's my question. I just screwed it up. The host name lockdown. This is the only thing that is not a standard other part of some common Unix utility that's existed since the dawn of time. I mean, this is a really strong point for jailing as far as building secure virtual machines. And I'll take a second real quick to jump to the side. Don't want to start any flame wars. I don't want to get in any angry arguments because all these different perspectives have a lot to learn from each other. But a lot of virtual machine environments, UML, have been incredibly insecure. Why? It's complicated to provide virtualized memory. It's complicated to provide completely virtualized network, disk, hardware access to simulate the hardware necessary to run your boot code. That's really complicated stuff. It requires a lot of developers with a lot of interest. There's not a gigantic amount of interest in machine virtualization as far as the world of computing goes. Most computer companies don't like it because it means you buy less stuff, less hardware. So you know, this becomes a problem for other machine virtualization environments because it's difficult to make them really robust and secure. UML lasted what? 2 years before there became really trivial exploits to pop out of a UML user mode Linux jail. Well, yeah, it's big and complex, and there's not enough people who care about it, and a lot more who care to break it. With jailing, you know, we're really talking about minor modifications to utilities to give them features. All right, and as a whole, everything that's allowed to happen in jails has been audited. So I'm not going to talk too much about the 4.x jailing because we're kind of moving beyond that. It's not, if you're just starting with this stuff, don't even, just move on. It's way more fun. But you know, in 4.x or jailing, there were a huge number of restrictions and things you couldn't do that, like System 5 IPC calls, couldn't do them at all in a jail because that code hadn't been audited. Nobody audited the System 5 IPC calls for like 15 years. Nobody had even looked at the stuff. It just keeps getting tossed in. So, you know, to be damned if they're just going to allow System 5 IPC calls in a jail. That kind of breaks the whole point. So you got Robert Watson and PHK sitting around auditing this stuff like maniacs. And a lot of other people in the BSD world. So, you know, realistically, when it comes to why jailing is a more secure virtual machine than a lot of other virtual machines, well, it's because there's so many more people with so many more agendas and so much more reliance on the utilities and tools you actually use with jails than there are to maintain something like Zen. I don't care how much money IBM throws at the problem, or anybody else. But this is an aside, nice bug next month, somebody speaking about Zen. So you know, there'll be recordings online and that kind of thing. So if anybody's interested, I'll be there. So some comments on isolate. Did anybody have any questions about that kind of stuff right now? What I've gone through? Okay. Yeah, something in the back. Can you repeat the question a little louder? I can't quite. Yes. Okay. Yes. Can I actually? I'll address that because that's cool. Yeah, he just said I'm dealing with x86 hardware, which the hardware itself doesn't lend itself to being virtualized. Yes, this is true. This is very true. And the gentleman in the back who just asked that question, please grab me later. I'd love to chat with you because I'm interested in doing more research in other virtualization systems, always. But with that stated, every implementation that I've seen of other types of machine virtualization, Sun, for example, has Sun, what are they, zones, I think? Solaris zones or something along the, yeah, okay. Solaris zones have specific system calls to allow inter-process communication between the jailed processes. So in that environment, they're really trying, it seems to me that that design was really to solve a problem of programs that are barfing on a regular and consistent basis, and not malicious users, not mutually untrusted users. Okay, so with that stated, I'm going to move on. Okay, cool. Some cool stuff. This guy, Evan Sarmento, did this thing called the Open Root Project years ago. One of the neatest things I'd ever seen at the time. Basically, it was a jailed server instance that Evan posted the root password on a web page, and every hour on the hour, the jail would, a tarball would dump out over the, or delete the jail directory, a tarball would dump out over it again, and it would restart. So every hour on the hour, the thing would be toasted. Now, after doing this, he found that these things called fork bombs created a lot of problems and were a real popular attack. They were really the only way to bring the system down. And I'm reading, you know, he published one of the first articles about addressing this problem in a sane way. And get to the end of the article, I'm reading this, and at the time he was like 14, and he did this for a bunch of junior high students. So there's a whole bunch of junior high students out there who are like awesome Unix terrorists. Oh, I can't say that word. With that stated, his original articles are reprinted in this URL, and these slides will be available later. We'll get to that in a sec. Let me see. He also wrote a page in the FreeBSD Architectural Handbook that addresses the issue at this point. So what you end up doing realistically is you changing syscontrol variables to your syscontrol configuration in the jail to restrict the number of processes that can happen in the jail, and then in the host system you lock it down using secure levels so that even the root inside the jail cannot edit that syscontrol configuration. All right, this is a big pain in the ass because when you start adding new jails and doing new things, you start needing to do things like change flags on immutable files and create new ones. It becomes really rigid and annoying to work in that environment. So in FreeBSD 5, you can actually lock down, thank you PHK for this one, you can actually lock down your secure levels on a per jail basis. It's just awesome. So that's the way to handle these problems. What do I mean by fork bombs? All right, a friend wrote a program that, simple, crude little program that it's called hog, and it hogs memory, and a bunch of people in here could write something like this. It just hogs, throw it in an integer, and it hogs that. So hog 100. Okay, that process is just going to hog 100 megs of RAM and just sit there. All right, while one do hog 100. Go. Watch your swap, just completely evaporate, and your system damn near stop, because you start spawning so many processes, it's over. That's a problem. That's a real problem. Again, this is never, or at least rarely, addressed in various contexts with jailing. All right, by the administrators. And some of these things, real quick as a side note, I kind of like the OpenBSD ideas about making the defaults something that's really, even if it's a little too rigid, a bit painful, because there's a lot of things that people do when they're setting up jails that really do open them up and kind of make the whole point of jailing kind of fall through the floor, and they're in the default configurations of how you work with jails. It's a little bit of a problem because on the other side, it gets difficult to learn how to use them if it's so rigid. Okay, so is this thing frozen? Yeah. This thing's frozen. Cool. I'm sorry, everybody. Oh, sorry, that would be it, folks. This power plug is nothing. Folks, I've got a few more little things, and then I'll let you get out of here, but anybody who wants to get out of here can. Yeah, anybody who wants to get out of here can. I just lost slides. Sorry about that, guys. What was I going to get to at the end?
Mic still works.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the mic still works. This is a really crappy end to this. There's no power in the plug up here. Basically, I'm just going to wing the end of this real quick. You want to lock down your jails. There's a bunch of syscontrol variables you can throw at the host system, which let you do things like automatically restrict file system views of any other mounted file system on the machine when mounting your DevFS. Very handy. There's another one that allows you to do things like ping, which wasn't allowed in the earliest incarnations of jailing. You can open up new network sockets. Now, that of course introduces other types of security risks. So realistically, you only really want to configure that if you need your jails to have ping, because now you can open up all these other network sockets in the jail and do all kinds of monstrous things. Let me see. There's also a flag to turn on and off System 5 IPC calls, and to also very importantly, lock down host name for your jail. All right. fast we can get it. Good. The what was I going to say? Can I answer a question right now? I'll have the slide back up in just a second. Anybody have a question? Yeah, you. Good question. Can you explain what you mean by covert channels a little bit more to me?
Well, you did it in a broad sense of communication between jails or outside of jails and back again in ways that are not intended.
Gotcha. Okay, covert channel in ways that are not intended. What's your question about these, about viewing these processes? Can you view them? I mean, are there, do you know?
Well, like, most recently, jail, E-Jail and a private certificate, a private key and a certificate, web server away from the other jails, which might be used for that information.
Okay. Sure. So you're wanting to. I'm not sure of your question, because the entire design. Let me throw this out. The entire design of chroot in the first place is to isolate processes' views of itself and any other processes that it spawns. Therefore, that's the entire intention of chroot. And jail's merely gluing chroot and an IP interface together. Good question. I will look that up and post that to Nice Bugs Talk list, because that's a really good question. Yeah.
Can you sniff the network from within a jail?
Can you sniff the network within a jail? Good question. Let me see. If you allow ping, then you're opening up network sockets and you can do all kinds of things. You may not have enough access to do things with your Ethernet interface, depending on what flags you throw. To your Mount DevFS. If you would like to do this from a jail, you could throw flags to Mount DevFS to actually allow you to manipulate the IP interfaces from inside the jail and do whatever you want. So you can throw it in your card into promiscuous mode, do whatever. But that has real serious security implications. So it's like.
By default, though, you can or cannot put your NIC into promiscuous mode, at least within a jail.
No, by default, no way. By default, no way. By default, you have very, very limited access, actually, of network interfaces. To repeat that, I was just told, by default, there's no dev BPF mounted in a jail. He said he hasn't tried it. Let's all go try it. See, any other questions? Okay, this is back up. We'll hit the end. We got power. Okay, so automating user creation and all this other fun stuff is, let me see if I can. Okay. Here's the page. Here's some pages. I'm just going to breeze through this at the end. Thanks for everybody who's staying. Here's some stuff you want to do in your host, syscontrol.conf, that you want to pay attention to. Setting host name. Enforce datafs is so that you can just restrict mount point information very quickly and easily. There's a few different options. You could throw that one. Allow raw sockets. That's for ping and everything else. Socket IP Unix IP route only. So you can access the routing sockets or not. You can the system 5 flags and then CH flags allowed. That is the wonderful thing you can use with tuning your jail syscontrol variables to mitigate the risk of fork bomb. And syscontrol, when you are looking for them on a host system, host or whether you're in a jail, the only difference is you do get security .jail.jailed. The source code for FreeBSD's commented pretty nicely so that if you wanted to, for some reason or another, mask the fact that you were or were not in a jail, you can pretty easily change this. It's not rocket science. Firewalls. People often ask in context, like, can I run specific packet filters from inside the jail? Not really, not without enabling a bunch of things that we were just discussing for doing things like sniffing networks. Not without doing a bunch of things that make the jails incredibly insecure and make it kind of silly to run jails in the first place. So, you know, you can do this from your host system very, very effectively. And at that point, your host computer acts like a perimeter firewall. How about it? All virtualized, all inside one thing. So, let me see. Fileback disks, real quick. Wow, they're really convenient. They're great. You want to watch out for your device numbering when you mount these things in dev on your host system, because things can get lost. This is where adding your IP address, or like the last couple of digits in some sane thing that makes sense in your environment, can be a really good thing to do. So you can actually find, you know, /dev/ a number that I actually know for this device node when you mount it. But they're great because you just have this file that you can transport across a bunch of different machines. Very, very easy to work with. And if you're using tarballs, you're tarballing a whole system, you run into little teeny gotchas that aren't showstoppers by any stretch of the imagination, but little gotchas with special flags on files, sticky bits on files, little teeny OS things that you'll run into that tar you may not preserve or think to preserve when you're using tar. It's just more complication. These disk images are great. So when you're working with fileback disks, it's pretty simple how to make them. They're pretty simple to make, and they're really simple to use. 2 lines, just using mdconfig to recognize the file as a disk device and then mounting the thing. Here's a start script with disk image. These will be up. Hold on just a moment. Here's some cron tab miscellany for jailing when you're just with a stock system. When you do save entropy and you do you adjust your time automatically via cron, suddenly your jail can't do these things to the host system. So they just start making noise in your logs. That's really the only annoyance there. Future directions are to have lots. You can have lots and lots and lots of jails on just a few boxes and run tons of machines and do all kinds of high availability stuff, real cheap. Want to start a kick-ass ISP? Do it in 1/8 of a cabinet. Go for it. Have fun. Make some money. Future directions, important fun. CARP is really important in dealing with in the future of making jails automatically jump between hardwares. GEOM to mount the actual disks across multiple hardwares. NFS improvements need to happen as well. Let me see. GEOM Gate is a really great tool. If anybody hasn't used that, I'll just mention it real quick. And performance tuning. Let me see. Compile into the kernel for fileback disks. This is going to become less relevant with the next release of FreeBSD, month and a half, 2 months, because they've done a lot of work, and your memory back disks or your fileback and memory disks are much faster. It's very nice. Gotcha. Removing a jail directory. That's another little annoyance. You want to ch flags, no chg, or else you can't delete a whole bunch of files. It's a little annoyance, so I'd like throwing it in. And take some things out of the jail cron tab. Okay, so jailing.net. If anybody's really interested in like compiling info on jailing, it doesn't really fit anywhere because everybody I've talked to uses jails in so many different ways and so many different environments that there's not really ever been any one place to centralize documentation. So it really is all over the place. Even within the FreeBSD source, it's in a lot of different places, so things that are relevant to jailing. So if anybody has any ideas for this, talk to me. If not, it's just going to disappear and go on with their lives. If anybody's interested, pay attention to the nice bug list. I'm going to have a jailing party. We did one of these a couple years ago. I put a box online, gave everybody root, and a bunch of quote-unquote somewhat trusted users, all got on the machine. We all just did a bunch of stuff and beat the crap out of jailing. If you wanted to get your feet wet, if you wanted to try some new exploit, if you wanted to do whatever. The way we did it last time is the first day we just got it up and built stuff and the objective was to keep it up through today. The second day was have at it. Let's take this box down in interesting and painful ways. So we're going to do another one of these sometime soon. Nicebug is a good place to pay attention to find this stuff. Quickie, a special thanks. I don't think Reality's here at Medical Problems. Reality and Winter Butte taught me a lot about jailing. PHK, Paul Henningkamp, and Robert Watson wrote it. They're great people. They're great folks, and I wouldn't be here without Nicebug and Les Mug in New York. And that's it for me. Thank you for all being so patient. And if anybody wants to, I'll stick around for questions. So that's it. Yeah.